A waitress gave her last $20 to a homeless man. The next morning, he bought her a restaurant. The rain had been falling over downtown Chicago for nearly 3 hours when Emma Carter looked at the clock above the kitchen door. 11:47 p.m. Only 13 minutes remained before closing. Emma rubbed her tired eyes and glanced toward the nearly empty restaurant. Most of the tables had been cleared, the coffee machine was being cleaned, and the cook had already started putting away the dishes. The restaurant was called the Blue Lantern, a small family-owned diner that had been standing on the corner of Madison Street for almost 30 years. To Emma, it was more than just a place where she worked. It was where she had spent the last 6 years of her life. It was where she had met her best friends, celebrated birthdays, cried after bad days, and sometimes sat alone after closing when she didn't want to go back to her tiny apartment. But lately, everything had changed. The restaurant had a new owner, and he didn't care about people. His name was Richard Blake. He had bought the Blue Lantern 3 months earlier and immediately started cutting expenses. Employees were working longer hours for less money. Food portions were smaller. The quality of ingredients had dropped, and the customers had noticed. That night, Emma had earned only $34 in tips. After paying for rent, electricity, groceries, and her mother's medicine, there wasn't much left. She opened her wallet while standing behind the counter. Inside were 2 $10 bills and a few coins. $20. That was all she had until Friday. She sighed. Great, she whispered. She was supposed to use that money for groceries the next morning. Emma closed her wallet and put it back in her apron. Just then, she noticed someone standing outside. An old man. He was standing beneath the restaurant's awning, trying to escape the rain. His clothes were soaked. His gray hair was messy, and he held a small, worn backpack against his chest. Emma watched him through the glass. He wasn't asking anyone for money. He wasn't holding a sign. He was simply standing there, waiting. The cook walked past Emma and glanced outside. Don't tell me you're thinking about letting him in. Emma frowned. He's freezing. We're closing. I know. And Richard told us not to let homeless people hang around. Emma looked back toward the man. He isn't bothering anyone. The cook shrugged. Your choice. A few minutes later, everyone left. Emma locked the front door. She turned off most of the lights. Then she looked outside again. The old man was still there. Emma couldn't stop thinking about him. She grabbed her coat and walked toward the entrance. When she opened the door, cold rain blew inside. The man looked up. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I'll move. You don't have to. He looked surprised. Emma stepped aside. Come in. We're closing, but you can sit for a few minutes and dry off. The man hesitated. Are you sure? Yes. He entered slowly. Emma brought him a towel. Here. Thank you. His hands were shaking. Emma noticed. Have you eaten? The man looked away. I'll be fine. That answer told Emma everything. She walked toward the kitchen. We have some soup left. The man immediately shook his head. No, I don't have money. I didn't ask you for money. She poured him a bowl of soup, added 2 pieces of bread, and placed them in front of him. The man stared at the food. How much? Emma smiled. Nothing. I can't accept that. Then consider my treat. He slowly picked up the spoon. After the first bite, his eyes closed. For a moment, he looked like someone who hadn't eaten properly in days. Emma sat across from him. What's your name? The man hesitated. Daniel. I'm Emma. Nice to meet you, Emma. They sat in silence for a while. Eventually, Daniel asked, Why are you still working this late? Emma laughed softly. Because bills don't pay themselves. Do you like your job? Emma looked around the restaurant. I used to. Daniel noticed the sadness in her voice. Used to? She nodded. The restaurant changed owners recently. The new owner doesn't really care about the employees. Daniel looked around. What's wrong? Everything. Emma sighed. He cut our hours, lowered wages, changed suppliers, and treats customers like numbers. The old owner knew everyone by name. Why don't you leave? Emma smiled sadly. Because finding another job isn't easy. And my mother depends on me. Daniel looked at her carefully. You're supporting your mother? She's sick. Emma immediately realized she had said too much. I don't usually talk about personal things with customers. Daniel smiled. Sometimes strangers are easier to talk to. Emma smiled back. She had no idea how important those words would become. When Daniel finished eating, he stood. I should go. Emma looked outside. The rain had become heavier. Where are you going? Somewhere. You can't sleep outside in this weather. I'll manage. Emma stared at him. Then she reached into her apron. She pulled out the two $10 bills. Daniel's eyes widened. No, take it. I can't. It's only $20. It's not only $20 if it's all you have. Emma froze. She looked at him. How do you know? Daniel nodded toward her wallet. You counted your money earlier. Emma laughed nervously. You're observant. Very. She held out the money. I need you to take it. No, please. Daniel stared at the bills. Why would you give your last money to a stranger? Emma thought about it. I don't know. She smiled. Maybe because someday I might be the stranger who needs help. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he accepted the money. His fingers trembled. Thank you. Emma smiled. Just promise me you'll use it for something warm. I promise. Daniel walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned around. Emma. Yes. If you could change one thing about this restaurant, what would it be? She laughed. Everything. No, seriously. Emma thought for a moment. I'd make it feel like home again. Daniel nodded. I understand. Then he walked into the rain. Emma watched him disappear down the street. She locked the door and turned off the final light. As she walked home, she kept thinking about Daniel. She wondered where he would sleep. She wondered if the $20 would be enough. And she wondered why his eyes had looked strangely familiar. She pushed the thought away. He was just a homeless man, a stranger, nothing more, or so she thought. The next morning, Emma arrived at the Blue Lantern at 6:30 a.m. She expected another miserable day. But when she opened the door, she immediately noticed something strange. 3 black SUVs were parked outside. A group of men in expensive suits stood near the entrance. Emma stopped. What is going on? One of the men turned toward her. Daniel? Yes. What Daniel? The man opened the restaurant door. Please come inside. Emma stepped in. The dining room was filled with people. Lawyers, accountants, business executives. And standing in the center was a man wearing a perfectly tailored black suit. Emma stared. It was Daniel, but he looked completely different. His hair was neatly styled. His beard was trimmed. He wore an expensive watch. And behind him stood a large group of executives. Emma couldn't speak. Daniel smiled. Good morning, Emma. Her mouth fell open. What happened to you? He laughed. I suppose I owe you an explanation. Emma looked around. Who are all these people? Daniel turned toward the room. My legal team. Emma's confusion grew. What? Daniel walked toward her. Because I have some news. He handed her a folder. Emma opened it. Her eyes moved across the first page. Then she froze. Purchase agreement. The Blue Lantern restaurant. She looked at Daniel. I don't understand. I bought the restaurant. Emma stared at him. You bought the Blue Lantern? Yes. But why? Daniel smiled. Because you told me last night that you wanted to make it feel like home again. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You can't be serious. I am. She looked at the papers again. But who are you? Daniel took a deep breath. My full name is Daniel Hayes. Emma waited. He continued. I'm the founder and chairman of Hayes Hospitality Group. Emma's eyes widened. She had heard that name. Everyone had. Hayes Hospitality Group owned hotels, restaurants, shopping centers, and luxury resorts across the country. Its estimated value was more than $600 million. Emma stared at him in disbelief. You're a millionaire? Daniel smiled. Several times over. Emma looked at the man she had fed soup to the night before. But why were you dressed like that? I wanted to see what people would do if they thought I had nothing. Emma's expression changed. So this was a test. Daniel shook his head. Not exactly. He sat down. Last year, my wife died. Emma's expression softened. She was the person who taught me that money means nothing if you don't use it to help people. Daniel continued. After she died, I started visiting places I owned without telling people who I was. I wanted to see what my businesses had become. He looked around the Blue Lantern. What I saw here broke my heart. Emma listened silently. Employees were miserable. Customers were leaving. The new management only cared about profit. He looked at her. But then I met you. Emma shook her head. I only gave you $20. Daniel smiled. Exactly. He leaned forward. You gave me the last money you had. Emma wiped away a tear. You didn't know I was rich. I know. Then why did you help me? Because I thought you were a person who needed help. Daniel nodded. That's the answer I was looking for. Later that morning, Daniel called everyone into the restaurant. He announced that Richard Blake was no longer involved with the Blue Lantern. He had purchased the restaurant from him personally. Then he made another announcement. Everyone's wages will increase. The employees looked at each other. Daniel continued. Healthcare benefits will be provided. People gasped. And nobody will be fired because of today's changes. Emma couldn't believe what she was hearing. Then Daniel looked at her. And Emma will become the restaurant's general manager. Emma nearly dropped her coffee. Me? Daniel nodded. You know this place better than anyone. But I don't have management experience. You have something more important. What? Heart. The employees applauded. Emma began crying. For the first time in months, she felt like things might actually get better. 3 months later, the Blue Lantern looked completely different. The walls had been repainted. The tables were repaired. The menu had improved. But Daniel insisted on keeping the restaurant's original name. Emma had become the general manager. And she had one rule. Everyone who walked through the doors deserved to be treated with dignity. One evening, Emma noticed an old homeless man sitting outside. She immediately walked toward him. Would you like something to eat? The man looked surprised. How much? Emma smiled. Nothing. She brought him soup, just like she had done for Daniel. Daniel happened to be visiting that evening. He watched from across the room. Emma noticed him. What's wrong? Daniel smiled. Nothing. He looked at the homeless man, then at Emma. You learned the lesson. Emma laughed. I think I always knew it. Daniel shook his head. No, you proved it. A year later, the Blue Lantern became one of the most successful neighborhood restaurants in Chicago. But Emma never forgot the night she gave away her last $20. One afternoon, Daniel handed her an envelope. She opened it. Inside was a check. Her eyes widened. Daniel, what's this? Your annual bonus. She stared at the number. $100,000? He smiled. You've earned it. Emma shook her head. I can't accept this. Daniel laughed. You once gave me your last $20. That was different. No. He looked at her seriously. It wasn't. Emma smiled. You really are impossible. Maybe. Daniel stood. But remember something. What? The $20 didn't make you valuable. Emma looked confused. It showed who you already were. Emma looked around the restaurant. People were laughing. Families were eating. Employees were smiling. The Blue Lantern truly felt like home again. She finally understood. Sometimes kindness doesn't return in the form you expect. Sometimes it doesn't come back as money. Sometimes it comes back as an opportunity. Sometimes as a friendship. And sometimes, when you least expect it, it changes your entire life. Emma had given a stranger her last $20 because she thought he needed help. She never expected to discover that he was a millionaire. She never expected him to buy the restaurant. And she certainly never expected that one small act of kindness would become the beginning of the best chapter of her life. But perhaps that was the real lesson. You never know who you're helping. So be kind anyway, because the greatest acts of kindness are the ones we do when nobody is watching.